14 years of corruption and lies and gaslighting. You've got two disgraced chancellors, Tory chancellors in this studio. You've got Nadine Dorries, a woman who barely turned up as her last year as an MP. And everybody out there is thinking, no more of this, no more of the lies, of the deceit, of the corruption, of the VIP PPE lane scandal, the betting scandal. I mean, who could ever have thought that a government would be as utterly banal and ridiculous as this one? So let's get the party started, because they have gone.
I'll drink to that.
Yay!
There we go.
Hey, cheers.
But what do you really think, Carol?
Never, ever in my lifetime have I seen what is patently a corrupt government like this one, where they are taking from the poor and they are giving to the already rich.
There's always been certain amounts of accusations of corruption.
There hasn't, though, not in the same way. That's the whole thing. And when you reach, of my generation, you realise during the 70s and the 80s, most of the things that we had were nationalised. They weren't privatised. So there wasn't this opportunity for contracts to be given to donors and associates. So the system has changed. That kind of action, I mean, we're going back to, the sense of entitlement and put him to one side. It's this scandal after scandal and this kind of, we are going to tell you what is best for you. And this detachment of Westminster and privilege and entitlement from people in the streets. My mission is to absolutely eviscerate them. Not just that they lose, but that they can't even form the opposition. And we can do it. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And that, it genuinely is. I first voted in the 1979 general election when Thatcher had a landslide victory. And Jim Callaghan at the time said, he said around every 30 years there's a sea change in politics, where it's almost as though the entire British population goes, no, we've had that now, we've had capitalism now, to the extent that we have. We've had corruption, we're not having that anymore. You've destroyed more or less everything that you can possibly destroy, Conservative Party and all your right-wing think tanks. We've had enough. And I feel that I feel the same this year as we had back then. I did my calculations, you know what I'm like with my numbers. And I did this back in, I think it was January or February, when we had 5,000 days of Conservative government. And I looked up on the Office of National Statistics, so I don't want anyone ringing in and questioning my numbers. And by then, the national debt was £2.7 trillion. So it had gone up by almost £2 trillion. You divide that effectively, I did it accurately, by the 5,000. And that equated to around, this is every day, the national debt had gone up for 5,000 days, every single day, by around £380 million a day under the Conservatives. On the flip side, the billionaires have quadrupled.
What happened drastically that you've gone
what happened was we've had a government which is, in my opinion, corrupt. And I could see that. And after, during COVID, we had all the VIP PPE lane information, which eventually came out, thanks to some incredible investigative journalists. And my anger was growing, as it was for a lot of people. Then we had Partygate and so on. And then I started digging, because I am a journalist, I was trained as a journalist. And so I just started to scratch the surface on so many Tory issues and Tory contracts. And it's like a fountain of contracts and money that goes back to Tory donors or associates.
There are so many women in the gig economy. There are women at the moment who are struggling to make ends meet. There are women who aren't earning a lot of money. They are going through a cost of living crisis. They're worried about their children and their education. They're worried about energy bills. They might be single mothers. For them to then challenge their place of work because they're saying, I need help, and that place of work saying, sorry, love, we'll get a new one in. It's impossible for them. And they're the women who don't have a voice. And that's why the Select Committee and the work that you're doing is very important. And the work that Menopause Mandate is doing. And Karen is doing. I mean, it's critical. I think we're at a critical mass. That Jeremy Hunt last week, we were talking about the budget and we want more people to stay in the workplace. Really? Then why aren't your ministers here answering the Select Committee's questions? Why? Where are they? Maria Caulfield was having a cup of tea when we were having lunch over in Portcullis House. That's not much of an example, is it?
In the 2 years preceding Johnson becoming Prime Minister, there was an approximation of £5.5 billion of fraud and waste on government departments. In the following 2 years, when Sunak was Chancellor, that quadrupled to £21 billion of fraud, and it's not being investigated. And this report said, not that mainstream media's reported any of it at all, people wouldn't even know it existed, because they leaked it out on the day Prince Harry was in court, again using the bad news day tactic.
I'm an old bird with an iPhone, that's me. I don't want to be a constituency member of Parliament, and I don't want to join any political party. I've never been a part of a party. And I believe in proportional representation. So we have a government, for instance, here who got 29% of the votes of the total electorate, and a lot of people didn't vote in 2019. But with that 29%, they had 100% of the power, and we all know what has happened since then. We know, the degradation of the NHS. We know, as just one example. So I try, in my way, because I have a full-time job as well, to put the evidence forward and to show, where politics is wrong. And our democracy is not good enough at the moment. They've abused our democracy.
£6 billion of the £7.9 billion that went through the VIP lanes for testing, it was £6 billion. They were recommended by Tories, and 6 billion was it. Nothing. No one's reporting it. 230,000 pensioners are still waiting for their proper pension. They have been underpaid, and some have died while they have been waiting. Nothing. But those are the realities that people are living. These are the things that people who are disconnected from Westminster are feeling, and that's what's reflecting in what is being said to Luke.